Good evening, everybody. This is Melinda Nipper from Special Education Advocacy Services of Luzerne, and we are here today with Joy Smiley Zabala, and we're also here with Kirk Benke. It's wonderful that we have Kirk back again. If you remember, Kirk was here with Universal Design and Learning. Anybody that is watching this at a later date and not live, we will be able to answer any questions that you have if we see them after the broadcast. So thank you very much, Dr. Joy Smiley Zabala, for being here with us today.
Thank you.
I want to just briefly introduce you to the audience. And I think that the most important things that aren't in your bio that you informed me of is that you have 5 grandchildren ranging from 28 to 11 in age, which means you were a child bride. And my husband and I have evolved into the home healthcare workers for our 15-year-old pug. So obviously the pug has had a good long life. So Dr. Joyce Smiley Zabala has been a leader in the use of assistive technology, AT, to improve education and life for people with disabilities for more than 3 decades. As a technologist, special educator, 40. Well, then you need to update the bio there, Joy.
I know, you're right. I'm just getting older and older.
No, you're not. Younger and younger. So special educator, teacher, trainer, and conference speaker. She has earned international recognition for her work on assistive technology and accessible technologies, universal design for learning, UDL, and accessible educational materials, AIM. And we're going to have Kirk and Joy possibly coming back in December and talking about AIM. So hopefully they'll become my resident hosts in my chats for parents, because they are both a wealth of knowledge. Dr. Zabala is the developer of the SETT Framework, and we're going to put up all of the ways to learn more about SETT outside of tonight and to be able to access the framework. A model that is widely used by families and educators for collaborative. There's a lot of feedback, and I don't know what's happening. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to mute the mics just until I get through this. I apologize. I don't do that normally. A model that is widely used by families and educators for collaborative decision making in all phases of assistive technology, service design, and delivery, and more. She is a co-founder of Quality Indicators for Assistive Technology, and if I have butchered that enunciation of the acronym, please let us know. And the facilitator of the Quate list. For more than a decade, Dr. Zabala has been the Director of Technical Assistance for CAST, where she directed the National Center on Accessible Educational Materials, and currently serves as a Principal Investigator for the Center on Inclusive Technology in Education Systems. So, big mouthful. Thank you so much for being here. We are very honored, and this is going to be a great evening with the two of you. Joy, I've got one question before we look at some of the materials that you have. When we were having a discussion, you said, look, SETT really is about common sense.
Right.
Why did you feel that if it's common sense that you needed to have this as a framework?
Well, you know, Melinda, one of the things that people say about common sense is it's not very common. I think we needed the framework, or I felt that we needed the framework because people didn't feel like they had a voice in assistive technology unless they knew about the technology, which really, not that some knowledge about the technology is important, but it's not the whole thing. And so I think that's where it came from, is the notion that everybody's common sense mattered, not just somebody's common sense. So the notion of encouraging collaboration, encouraging participation of the student, encouraging participation of the family, and the pertinent professionals, not necessarily always the same group, depending on what the situation was. So I think the other thing that happened is when assistive technology back when I started, probably didn't even have a name like assistive technology, but the notion that technology would be related to function, and how do we think about this? And we thought mostly about, in that time, it was mostly about people with much more severe disabilities. And as the work and the law moved forward, and it was time to think about every kid and considering whether a student needed assistive technology or not, then there was a need for some way that we could begin to think about not necessarily the severity of the condition, but how the condition impacts functional abilities. So I think that's it.
Well, and bringing in that piece about functional abilities, and Kirk, you can speak to this also about UDL, is that really encouragement isn't just for the SETT to be in the educational setting. It could be in like an Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, workplace training. It could be, being able to access the supermarket.
It's sort of like, sorry. Yeah, not just education. It's somebody's whole life. In fact, Kirk, you probably remember at one point at CAST, we actually talked about, universal design for learning. Are we really talking about universal design for living? That it all still sort of works.
And it's really not a matter of, just like the SETT framework, the SETT framework gives you sort of a structure or scaffold, if you will, to help you make decisions or appropriate decisions for technology. Whereas universal design for learning, it's not so much as just the pillars and just the scaffolds that are there. It's really about how you think about learning. That it's not about always about the teacher being the facilitator or being the owner of all of the knowledge there, and then the teacher is going to be giving that to the students. And that's kind of the traditional way of what we looked at in a teaching environment, where the focus is on teaching. Now, with the universal design for learning, the focus really should be on the learning. And who's learning are the students. So your focus should really be on the students that are there, how they can access that information, what are they going to do with that information, and how can they show that they know that information. So when you kind of look at those two, they do really work well together. And in fact, one of the guidelines in universal design for learning guideline is all about accessible and assistive technology, is ensuring that that's there for the student. So it's a stronghold, and that's really where CAST, the developer of universal design for learning, had their roots. Their roots were in, assistive technology, making and developing and producing and cultivating technologies that were going to become accessible for those who need it.
Right. In fact, CAST used to be called the Center for Accessible Center for
Applied Special Technology.
Don't tell anybody, I couldn't say it. But it isn't that anymore. It's just CAST. And people will look that up and they'll say, oh, special technologies. No, it's really not about that anymore. That absolutely were the roots of CAST.
I want to encourage also our audience that is watching us tonight, if you have any questions in regards to any of this, even if, so long as it's not specific to a district, we want to keep some anonymity for the audience. We can put your questions in generalized terms. We are more than happy to try and answer any of them. And we've got the two experts here that really can answer all of them. I kind of know the educational side of dealing with the school districts, but when it comes to the actual setup of the framework and anything that has to do with the UDL piece and that intersection of all of that, I mean, we really have the creator and I'm sorry, fangirling again, Kirk, because the ultimate, to me, person on really allowing parents to understand UDL is you. I've been to many conferences and I have not ever had that full engagement. that we had when you were speaking with our group. So, you know, I really do set other conference speakers at your level on being able to integrate the whole audience at different levels. So, and having everyone still be able to understand. So, Joy, do you want us to pull up the slideshow?
If that works
and
for
then
you.
we can go through that. Yeah, I mean,
Yes, of
I'll
course,
pull
Joy
this out
prepared too
because
many
I think
slides
there's
for
a
us to
few.
go through here.
Of course, of course.
So
Well, I
we'll
tried.
get through them quickly if we have to, but then at least they're there for people to review, right?
That's
And we do
that's
have
the
some
main.
other, and we do have some other pieces that we'll be able to share afterwards as well. So
Right. And if we don't finish this one, we share this one too.
absolutely.
Hey,
Now, where
Kirk,
did
I
it
cut him
go?
down from 65. So
So that's good. That's good.
And that's why there's only 26 now. Come on, Kirk.
right, Kirk,
Yeah.
that's good.
20,
Where are we going?
26 in an hour.
I only needed 3.
We've done worse, right, Joy?
We have.
I'm going to bring this up, and I'm going to have to just pull this down the screen. I'm going to pull this up. This one's so I had some tech. So I apologize for how this is. My husband's into a little bit of anime. Slideshow, and let's go from the beginning. So, can everybody see the slideshow? They should be able to.
It looks good.
I can.
Yep. Great. So you just tell me when you want me to change slides for you, because I can't see our screen now.
Oh, right. That's bad part about your screen being shared. So the reason it's called Straight from the Horse's Mouth, which I've gotten a lot of sort of gentle ribbing from many of my colleagues about that, is that is the place, you know, that there's a saying in the States that says, if you want the real thing, you go straight to the horse, you get it straight from the horse's mouth. So for the SETT framework tonight, I'm the horse. So you can continue on, Melinda.
And a thoroughbred she is.
That's it. So I put
Can
this
I
up
ask you a
just
question
because.
on this slide?
Certainly.
The next slide that we have, and it should be coming up in a second, is CP Snow. Is that Kathy Snow?
I don't think so. I don't. Okay. It's not somebody in this area. It was just somebody that said this thing about technology. And the reason I put this usually second is because sometimes, and it doesn't seem like this is happening tonight, but sometimes by the time you get to the second slide, you've had 50,000 technology problems. So you get both the gift and the stab. But I think tonight we're definitely in the gift area. So continue on. So the 4 things that actually 3 things we'll look at is there's some myths about the SETT framework, what people think it is. Talk a little bit about those 4 parts. And if we have time, I really would like to get into the conversation. And I know that the SETT framework is not totally new, probably to most people, which is why it seems to me that there are a few things that I would at least like to focus, because a lot of times what people think is using the SETT framework to work through, for me, is everybody can do what they want. It's a framework, but still. So, and look at the 4 parts and then that conversation. So if you go ahead.
Absolutely.
So some of the myths, and this is some people think, and I think what's really scary about this slide is if people don't say some people think, they might think this is true, and these are not true. Pegasus is a myth. He is not a real flying horse, and that's how these things are too. People sometimes think that the SETT framework is an assessment protocol, but it's not. Elements of the SETT framework need to be discussed first the student, then the environment, then the tasks, and then you can get to tools. Talk a little bit about that. Also, the myth is that it takes a long time to use the SETT framework. And one of the things we know is that if the issues are not very complicated, it really doesn't take very long. And if they're complicated, you're going to take a long time whether you use the SETT framework or not. And the key is not doing it over and over and over and over and missing student learning time that you can never get back because you didn't sort of front load, you know?
Yeah, so I do want to just have a real quick discussion about, because in PA, we do call that SETT framework an assessment. And I think that that's where some of that confusion comes from, is that it is an assessment and it has to be done as set as it's outlined in the assessment framework that is on the patent website. I think when we have our user come out and do the SETT framework, there are some that have taken it as this time framed and detailed section that you have to do this first and that first. But the really good SETT, and I've been with a lot of SETT assessors, the really good ones, it's a discussion. We sit down, we discuss it. We do look at each of the parts in their entirety, but it's a discussion. And it's like, sometimes we just first off discuss technology, or we'd look at, okay, well, if the child just needs to have a fidget, or, well, what is it that they need?
Exactly. And I think that is one of the pieces that's a concern. So the SETT framework, SETT is student, environments, tasks, and tools. And the one thing I want to point out here is the S on environments. So let's go ahead and talk just a little bit about what those 4 elements are. They can go forward. So a frame, that notion of it's not an assessment protocol. A protocol tells you do this, do this, do this, and then you get an answer. And the SETT framework is really a flexible tool that helps identify concerns and consider possible solutions, and making sure that those processes are not only accessible to everyone, but are also everyone is included. And it's useful in all phases of decision-making, service delivery, whether it's about assistive technology or whether it's just about being alive, and whatever your goals are and how you move forward toward those goals.
And for parents and educational decision makers, whether you be a parent or a parent guardian or a guardian in the state, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're on that IEP team, then you are an integral piece of this. This is not just an educational decision-making process. You are involved in every step. And if you feel that it's appropriate for your student to be involved, then your student should be involved as well, because ultimately it's for them.
Exactly. And then the whole nothing about us without us kind of thing, the student's voice is really important. So the goal basically of the SETT framework is to help that collaborative team that bring different knowledge and skills to the table. Thank goodness we're all not alike. Otherwise we would just go like lemmings in a row and not really end up anywhere very, very useful. So what we want to create is student-centered, environmentally useful, and task-focused tool systems that foster education, not just education, but participation and achievement in wherever barriers are, to look at lowering those. So to me, the SETT framework is a way of thinking. And Kirk, you mentioned the same thing about UDL. It's a way of thinking, and your thinking leads your actions. It's a way to encourage collaboration, and way to engage others in the conversation. And one of the things that's big in assistive technology, I think, is it's a way to lower the chances of, that's supposed to be chances, not changes, sorry, the chances of abandonment, because abandonment and underutilization are rampant, and have even been more so, I think, in the past. And then to know that it's an iterative, ongoing process. You don't just finish the SETT framework. People would say to me occasionally, oh yeah, we did one last year. Well, was there no change in the student? Are the environments exactly the same tasks? And we sort of hope from year to year they're not exactly the same. Then maybe maybe our expectations are not high enough if we have the same goals over and over and over. So that's sort of my thought of what it is. So if you go forward. So when we look at those 4 elements, and I've been thinking about this a lot because I do a lot of work in countries where English is not the language. And so student environment and tasks and tools doesn't exactly translate sometimes. So I begin, the student is what you're doing is you're describing the who. And in schools that happen to be students. If we're talking about ourselves, then we would use something else there, because I do think we should set ourselves occasionally. So when you're thinking about your student, though, you're looking at, so what are the functional areas of concern? What is it that the student needs to be able to do that's difficult or impossible to do independently, or as independently as possible at this time? Now, some people look at that and they say, but that's the task, isn't it? No, at this point, you're looking at the big functional areas. Is it moving about? Is it paying attention? Is it speaking? Everything that is just part of a human function. Where are those pieces that there are currently barriers that possibly technology could erase? And we don't even have to worry about the technology, how they're going to be erased at this point or lowered.
Joy,
Sure.
so in that piece too, I mean, we could be, you know, if it's a student with dyslexia, we'd be talking about initiation to task and, you know, organization and those sorts of things. Because I think that people, we really do think about this sort of type of assessment just for kids who, you know, may have a language barrier, you know, may have apraxia or, you know, is non-verbal autistic. But this really is for any kind of disability that is impacting the environment for the child to access.
Exactly. And I think what because assistive technology is legally and really practically related to function, that we have to remember that there may be lots of conditions or disability categories that actually impact the same function for a student. So the more we can think about something that, for example, instead of what do we do, what kind of technology might be useful for a student with cerebral palsy, which is, of course, a very funny question because they're not the same at all. But if somebody says, well, what do we do for a student with autism? Then all of a sudden people start knocking things, oh, this and this and this. How does autism impact this? There's just as big a range there as there is in cerebral palsy. And it
or
could
learning
be
disabilities.
Or learning disabilities. Absolutely. The range is big for everything. So you want to know what the student's special needs are related to those areas of concern, what their strengths and abilities that you can build on. The present levels of achievement in schools is important because that's what we're sort of basing what our decision making is about going forward. And then the students' expectations. How does the student see themselves? And you know, and you probably live a good bit of when a student's expectations are so low because they have not succeeded over and over and over, then that's going to be something that we need to think about. How do we?
Oh, sorry, Joy.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
We had a lag. I thought you were finished. I was just going to say, I get this in meetings all the time. Is that we have to make it attainable, and I'm like, you know what? You set that bar low enough, you're going to get success. You don't have to put a lot of effort in, but you'll always get success. Is that successful for the student, or is that success for you? And for me, it's always, you've got to look at the student. You have to look at what is successful for that student. And we should have higher expectations because the law demands it of us.
Someone said to me one time, oh, we don't put anything in the IEP that the student can't do. And I was like, then what are your goals then? If the student can already do it, I mean, that's not just about technology, that's about everything. Why would you ever not aspire to more? And you know what? If it doesn't work, if we don't get as far as we intended to be, we have moved forward. And I think that's sometimes people get scared about, what if I put it there and the student doesn't achieve it? All right. What's next?
Then let's look at
what
why.
do we do? Yes. Then why did that happen, and how can we provide more supports and strategies to move forward? Kirk, did you want to?
Yeah, I'm going to bring in the UDL piece because it's the exact same thing. If you look at Universal Design for Learning, and you just have all these low expectations and your goals are set so low, then all the kids they're either going to lose interest or, tell you that, I'm going to have a behavior now because I'm not going to listen because I'm totally bored out of my mind. But you have to have appropriate goal setting for not only, the classroom environment, but also for individual students. And so what you need to do is ensure that those goals are set up properly. They're attainable, but they're also challenging enough for everyone in the classroom. And then also, how are they going to achieve those goals could be differentiated or looking at your other pillars of UDL. And that includes also, the assistive technology assessment as your bigger overall umbrella, and then using the SETT framework to have these discussions.
Right. So basically, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, because I liken that always to we have high standards for students with autism for behavior in school. And oftentimes it's actually even a higher standard than for the other kids. Well, why aren't we doing that with the academic piece? Why aren't we doing that with the other areas of function and not just behavior?
Right, right. So that's the basic thing you're trying to do here is to get a collaborative picture. We could be talking about a student, and Kirk could know the student in one situation. I could know the student in another. You could know the student in yet a third, Melinda. And our picture's not the same picture.
No.
And so if we don't talk about, what are the strengths, the challenges, have the student talk about strengths and challenges if they can. That's what gives us a picture about who we're actually talking about. So then if you flip to the environments, and with the environments, you're really describing the where does this student spend their time? And of course, when we think about one of the things that bothered me the most ever is someone was using the SETT framework, and what they had written under environments was 4th grade classroom. I'm like, okay, that doesn't really tell me hardly anything, because what's the arrangement in that classroom, both the physical arrangement and the instructional arrangement? Or is it a general ed classroom? Is it another, a self-contained classroom? Is it a partly both? Hopefully we don't have too many students that we're talking about right now that are incarcerated. But, when we talk about the general education classroom being the least restrictive environment, we also have students who are in the most restrictive environments. But understanding what those environments are and what's possible are important. So, and what sort of support is available, both to the student and to the staff and to the family? It makes a big difference if I can ask the person next door, or I have good access to someone electronically, or if I'm on my own out there trying to figure it out. And I think if anybody ever thought the environments were not critically important to learning, one of the things with COVID-19 is everybody realizes how different the environments are. And so, because most people are in their own, and you still have to figure out how all of this works. So that support available is really important. What kind of materials and equipment are there? What are other people using? Can that work for this student or not? And we could go deep into any of these and spend a lot of time. But then access issues. Do they have physical access to the building? Do they have access to the technology? Do they have access to the instruction that's going on? Are they active? Does this environment invite everyone to learn and grow here? To me, when I think about UDL and the SETT framework, when we get to the tools part, we certainly will be talking about possibly tools for the student, but we will also be talking about enriching that environment and making that environment into this place where everyone who comes here can learn here, which to me, of course, and Kirk, because we think the way you do that is with UDL. There are other things that are not called UDL that people do this, but how do you have that rich environment? But we have to know what the environment is, so we want to know how to enrich it. So,
and I just want to bring in the whole environments now that we're talking about is virtual environments, because there's a lot of students who are, attending classes or school virtually. And this is a whole different environment that some of the students are not familiar with. Many of our teachers are just not familiar with, or have the resources or tools that they need in order to make different types of either accommodations or modifications to the curriculum. And they're learning on the fly, and I give the teachers a lot of credit for doing that. But it's something to kind of consider as you look at that environment of being an online learning environment. How are you able to then, process having small group instructions? How can you also make sure that this kid that you have in your regular classroom who is required to have accessible instructional materials, ensure they have access to those materials that are digitally for them to access? What are some of those things that we have to really consider when we're talking about the environments?
Yeah, all of those, what is the online environment? What is the online environment in your home? Do you have 4 people that are trying to use one piece of technology to do their work and everyone's got to do it? Or have you got, I look around here and I have enough technology for about 8 people. So if anybody needs any, you can call me. I'll send you some. But it's really different. And also there's even the issue that I've heard come up quite a lot is teachers want to see their kids. So they want the cameras on. And sometimes families and kids don't want everything that's going on in the background in the classroom, basically. Lots of interesting issues related to the environments. Even when we're all at school, there's still lots of interesting issues because Mr. Jones's class and Mrs. Brown's class are not the same environment. Cafeteria, playground, not the same environment as the classroom. The hall, all of these pieces. So it's a really rich, neat piece. So let's look at the tasks. So the tasks are the for what, now remember back for the student, we said what functional areas are difficult or impossible. All right. In this one, you're saying, what are the tasks related to that functional area? Someone said to me one time, well, where are the goals in the SETT framework? The goals are not in the SETT framework. The goals are in the curriculum and the expectations and all of that. The SETT framework is about how do we move toward our goals? And the tasks are, what do we do? Okay, there's a communication issue. What does that look like in this classroom or in this place? What communication tasks need to be done at this age, at whatever, I've often sat and watched a teacher teach just, for not for fun, but the two of us have decided, watch me and see what I do that I'm expecting everybody to do because I'm not sure I know. So with the tasks, how does one get attention, when it's their turn, if you're not a kid that can raise your hand or if raising your hand isn't expected? So what are the specific things, the functional things that part of being an active, involved, productive member of this class? And it's not, if tests are just not the goal. Let's say, I think probably all over the country, you're supposed to read on grade level by the end of grade 3. I mean, no, it's just legislated to happen. So of course it does, right? Not usually, but I've never ever seen a teacher who said, okay, boys and girls, let's get out our books and we're going to read on grade level. That's not what you do. It's the tasks that you do to learn to read on grade level. We're going to circle all the words that we don't know. We're going to have a conversation about what they mean. The kinds of things that you do that are related to communication, participation, productivity. What are people expected to produce? Do I have barriers myself for being able to do those kinds of things? Do I have what I need to control my environment? And I'm not necessarily talking about an electronic thing, but how do people control their environments? And so there are tasks basically related to those. And you'd look at your goals that were already set in your IEP and you'd say, all right, what are the tasks that help us move toward those goals? Do we have barriers in that area? Does this student have barriers in that area? All right. So once we have that shared vision of who we're talking about, where we're talking about, and the for what, the things that need to be done there, then we're ready to talk about the tools. So let's flip to the tools. And by the way, everybody loves to start with the tools. And really, it's hard to find a solution if you don't know what the concern is. We have a history of putting a lot of solutions in place for things that weren't broken. And that's really important. I think you're maybe muted.
Sorry, Melinda, you're
muted.
Yep.
I have this notion of Melinda sitting back there with 700 things going on at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. She's Oz behind the curtain.
That's right.
That's
there you are.
Pretty much. Are we still up on the screen?
Yeah, we're up on the screen now.
From the slide.
So
okay, so here we go back to the slide. Sorry about that. I want to just ask you a quick question in this task because one of the things that comes up quite frequently is that they only want to look at the goals that are already specifically in the IEP and what the barriers are to those. However, I've noticed that when we've gone through different things, and if we're doing it and really looking at those environmental pieces, we're actually finding more areas that we may need a goal for, or that we need to provide for, even though it's not as a goal.
Right. And maybe you need to go back and write a goal for that, if depending on the situation and how flexible, people are. You want to make sure you write a goal that's general enough that it actually can be useful and not too specific. But sometimes you notice, when you really look at the environments, you notice barriers that you didn't think of before. I know we do that a lot. So when we think about the tools, remember that the tools are the how. So at this point, we have a good sense of who we're talking about, working together, who we're talking about, what the environments are, what the tasks are. And now we can say, okay, so now we're at the tools. And a lot of times people think, oh, the tools are devices, right? Well, a device might be, but the tools in the SETT framework are much broader. It's whatever is needed by the student and by others, so that the student can accomplish those tasks where they're supposed to be accomplished, when they need to be done, so that progress is achieved. So you can click a little bit more, and I think
Joy, when we talk about assistive technology, I mean, within the description of assistive technology is any technology. It doesn't have, like, anything that helps. It doesn't have
item.
Technology as what we're doing. It doesn't have to be an electronic device, right? No. So it could just be a task sheet.
It could be, yeah. You may call that another kind of accommodation rather than assistive technology, but there's a principle that says the least complex intervention that will lower the barrier is what you want to use, because otherwise you're adding complexity to what a student's already having difficulty doing. So the whole notion here is that you can click again, that we look at a student's abilities and strengths, and we put the tools in place so that they can build on those strengths to reach their goals. So, and off they go. So, and go to the next one, please. So when we think about tools for the student, there's a lot of things, and you notice technology is there, but it's not the only thing that's there. The main thing is, what are we looking for is what the student needs so that they can do, or because we have high expectations, learn to do the tasks that lead to that participation and achievement. So accommodations, modifications, accessible materials, supports and services, all of these things fall into the tools part of the SETT framework. The notion is, basically, how are we going to, or even just what are we going to do so that this student has what they need to do their tasks, to be successful in their environments?
So, Joy, in PA, we have a specially designed instruction area in our IEPs. We do, unlike some states where we have accommodations and modifications and they're clearly defined what they are. Can you just, I obviously know what the difference is, but can you speak to the audience about the difference between what is an accommodation and what is a modification?
Sure. And interestingly, IDEA doesn't talk about anything but the modifications. It doesn't use the accommodation word. I shouldn't say this, but rarely do we find a really good word from the assessment community that really helps, but this is one of them. And that's the accommodations. That an accommodation means I'm going to get to the same place, but I might do it in a different way. Or I might have something change, but the notion is that the outcome or the opportunity for the outcome is the same. Okay, with a modification, you're actually changing the expected outcome in some way. Now, sometimes we do have to modify a curriculum or modify how something's done, but we should only modify when we can't accommodate. Because when you modify, it absolutely impacts a person's opportunity to learn, because you're not expecting the same outcome. And not only are you not expecting it, you're not moving toward the same outcome. So absolutely, this doesn't mean don't modify, but it means really be sure you can accommodate before you modify. Now, Kirk, did you want to say any more about that? I think we've talked about that.
I was just going to give an example.
Yeah.
Ones that I've used is an accommodation is like you both are given directions to get to the post office so that you can mail your ballot. Sorry, as Pennsylvania, we can say something about the ballots, right? And one way is that one person would ride a bike. Another way would be someone would walk to the post office. Another person would take the bus. Another person would drive in their own car. That's an accommodation.
And you can even ask someone else to take it for you, which is also an accommodation. Yeah.
And that's an accommodation. Whereas a modification is actually you change the destination, so that you're not going to the same place that everyone else is, but you're getting there, or you're going hopefully in the same route, but you're not getting to the exact same place. I don't know if that's correct or not, but that's what I've been using.
I think that's pretty good. It's like you dropped it off in a box on the way. And the trouble is you didn't know for sure that somebody was going to pick up that box and take it to the voting place. So therefore you didn't have a good opportunity to be sure that your vote actually got to where it was.
So an accommodation
for a Pennsylvania thing.
That is, yeah. I don't know if we need to get into the political stuff right now.
No.
Of course, right?
Just balance.
So, the way that I explain accommodations and modifications to parents specific to, like, say, a student with a learning disability would be that they're going to make an accommodation that the student gets, 20% more time in order to be able to hand the work in, but they're doing the exact same work. And I would always want to see that versus, okay, well, we're going to take 50% of the work away because then we're taking away that exposure that student actually needs. So we're actually limiting access.
Right.
So, it really does fundamentally change the work that they receive rather than accommodating that there might just be a need that I need 10% more or 20% more time in order to complete the exact same thing as everybody else is completing.
Right.
Graphic organizers are an accommodation, things like that. And I want to highly encourage that parents always look at specifically what's in those SDIs to determine what are accommodations and what are modifications, because when we take stuff away, we are reducing educational access.
Right, and opportunity. Yeah.
And opportunity.
One word of caution when we do accommodations, and if you're saying like, word maps or, a word abbreviation expansion program or a, word prediction software or whatever as an accommodation, make sure that it's written in the IEP. As an assistive technology tool, because unfortunately what's happening, and this is the graying of the area of universal design for learning, is that we're building in many of these types of scaffolds for learning, which is great, but unfortunately if they go away, if a free tool goes away that's online that you've been using all the time, and all of a sudden it goes away, you're stuck and you've relied on that tool and it's not written in your IEP, then you're definitely stuck, and you need to make sure that it's written down.
Right.
And there was an OSEP letter that actually discussed that, is that, if a child has to have something in order to be able to access the curriculum, is that it should be in the IEP regardless if everybody else is using it.
Exactly.
And that is extremely important as well, because at one grade level in one school, all students might be able to use a calculator. Well, we might have a child with a math disability who really does need it. It's now not in the IEP. They change schools or change states, and at that grade level that he now goes into, they don't allow a calculator. And you've got to start that process all over the time, again, as to determine whether or not the student actually needs that. So if it's something that is needed, even if everybody else is using it, it goes in the IEP.
And sometimes it's even a feature. We'll talk about this more when we talk about AIM, but the notion of, you have these wonderful tools that have options for everyone. But if one of those options is something that I absolutely need in order to be, it's not a choice for me, it's a requirement for me, then that option, that she has XYZ, but she needs to have this one in her IEP, even if it's this technology that everyone is using. So, and then that's hard. That's hard for a lot of people to sort of wrap their heads around, but it's really important.
Well,
It's
I just want to really bring up some for my own daughter. I want to bring this in because I think that this is really important, because when we went to virtual, this didn't happen. So within her IEP is that she has access to audio of all anything that is written, and that included websites. Then we go to virtual, and where they were sending these kids to was not accessible to her because they didn't have an option for audio.
That's not good.
No,
that's not good at all.
We've now changed things, but I just, if it's in the IEP and your child needs it, and you've gone from the classroom to home, and maybe they don't have access to the school Chromebook and they're using your own device now, and you don't have all these programs that they were using, that needs to be provided as well. And that's why it's so crucial to have anything in the IEP that the child needs.
And I think too, the other, and this is just a push something that I think is very important. When you write an accommodation or a modification into an IEP, you should also write the circumstances under which it is needed. Because, like, let's say extended time, which is the one you brought up, Melinda. It doesn't mean that everything needs to be extended, because if everything's extended, then the poor kid there's eventually an end point of time. But the things that need to be, under these conditions, time needs to be extended. Or under these conditions, the student needs this particular kind of tool. So that it's very clear how the accommodation is to be used. And I think if we talk more about the conditions, then I think that teachers are much more comfortable with, okay, now I understand about this accommodation, why it's important. An IEP that my husband brought home one time and sort of tossed in the room to me, like he said, could you have a look at this? And I knew he didn't expect a good outcome because he was backing up as he handed it to me. And on the IEP form, it said modifications, had this giant list, and it says pick up to 10.
Whoa, what?
I'll take this one, and how about that one? That makes no sense. So let's look at these tools for the others. That's the other part. This is the part, I think, where we think about the tools that enrich the environments. By enriching the people who are in those environments. What does everybody else need? It's support for family and staff. Is it decision making, or what are diversification strategies we can think about? Again, those accommodations and modifications, and knowing what the differences are. Device integration and operation. And I will say, I've got those on the same line. They almost don't go on the same line, because operating a device and integrating a student using that device are two very different things. And do we have to take a look at our service delivery? Is it what works the best, or do we need to think about doing things possibly differently? And then, of course, how do we manage this really interesting environment? And both of these come with an et cetera, because it could be something else. But again, that way of thinking, what is it that other people need, so that environment is a place where everyone can learn and grow? So that sort of wraps up student environment tasks and tools. One thing I did want to say, though, is that you really shouldn't talk too much about the tools before you know who's going to use them, where they're going to use them, what they're going to use them for. I personally don't think you can talk about the student without mentioning something about the environments or the tasks. I just don't think you can. I mean, if I say, I'm James's third grade teacher, and I'm really concerned about his calculation because the other kids are getting it and he's not. And, the other 25 kids are doing fine with that. So what shall we do for James? I've told you things about James. I've told you things about the environments. There are 25 kids. He has a concerned teacher. That's a good thing. A lot of different things, and the task that is a problem for him. And that was just one sentence. So when you're having these rich conversations, that's the reason I think you separate them out into student environment and tasks is because when you get to tools, you're going to say, where are the supports needed? Is it the environment? Is it the student? Is it the environment? Is it the tasks? What is it that we need to do here? So anyway, let's go to the next part. Now, I think the next part is oh yeah. Okay, I think this is what I just said. to make
So
sure.
we'll go on to the next
Yeah,
part on the scaffolds,
right.
shall we?
Yeah, and the scaffolds are, and Melinda has another set of a PowerPoint set that really takes you through how to use the scaffolds, because the scaffolds are very much about tool selection and all of that. There are scaffolds for implementation, evaluation of effectiveness, but if you're having trouble with, don't seem to be agreeing in the direction we're going here, use that consideration scaffold, which has a great place on the front of it where you circle the areas of concern. And it really gives you a nice, like, I think maybe 12 different areas of concern. It's either 9 or 12. I can't remember the grid. And you begin to think about that. Think about the data gathering, how you use those scaffolds to actually move you to being able to make some informed decisions about the tools. So they're pretty much in the initial intent of the framework, which in the last 25 years has gone from me talking about it for 5 minutes in a presentation to now we can practically talk about it for a month, because that's just how it is. So at this point, do we have time to talk a little bit about the conversation?
We do. And what I want to just talk about the scaffolds that you can get off of joyzabala.com is great for parents too, to be able to go into the meeting to already have some thoughts identified for yourself as part of consideration in the conversation. And I think that, as equal participating members of the IEP team, we should be doing our homework a little bit too. What is our student telling us that their difficulties and their barriers are? So let's go. I just want everybody to keep that in mind and to be looking at the actual grids and stuff that you do have available on your website for use. So I'm going to go to.
I have to tell you that they're printable, but they're not accessible.
Let's get to
so
this.
The scaffolds are printable, but they're not really accessible. But I think that you could figure out, you can still look at them and they can give you some good ideas about moving forward. Someday there'll be an online one you can fill in, but not yet. So the conversation, I think for me, the thing that, because the SETT framework is an idea and a way of thinking, I think the conversation is really important. How do we focus on the common interest in the individual achievement of the student? And then how do we align our thoughts on how to foster that progress and achievement? And I will tell you, I don't think I've ever been in an IEP meeting or even a casual meeting where there wasn't common interest in the student moving forward. But where we get crosswise is aligning our thoughts on how to best foster it. We all have our own idea about the best way. So how do we move together in that? So with the team, the student is always the center of the team. Everybody at the table is an advocate for that student. If not, kindly excuse yourself from the table. If you are not, or if you think someone else is not, you might excuse them from the table, because the common interest of the student's progress is the most important thing. Family members have important contributions and concerns, as you know your student better than anybody else. Team members bring different gifts. The knowledge, skills, observations, ideas, suggestions, and all of that is why it's so important for this collaboration piece. And the multiple perspectives are vital, but they can be messy, because you and I may have very different ideas. But if we don't talk about it from our different perspectives, we're not really going to be able to come up with a workable solution.
But they can be messy. Because you and I may have very different ideas. But if we don't talk about our different perspectives, we're not really going to be able to come up.
Do you all hear me talking again?
I hear some feedback there.
Okay. And then the other thing is, when you're in that messy place, which is not a bad place to be, but keep the conversation respectful and not confrontational.
Are you good, Joy?
I think it's okay. Is it okay now?
Yep, it's a fine with me.
Okay. It's just that think of the difference between if someone says, this is what I think, if you say, well, why do you think that? Or,
I think so. Can you hear me?
yes.
Yes.
And then the difference in, tell me more about that, about how you're thinking about that is a much more civil way for us to converse. So if you could go ahead to the next one real quick, Melinda. So remember in the could you go to the next slide?
There we go.
There. So we all come to the conversation with our own perspective. And the goal is to come to what do we know collectively. And then
I just went too far now.
Oh, no, you're good. No, that's, need to go back one now, if you would. Don't worry. It's okay. Everybody needs to think about, okay, here, this in the conversation.
There's a little bit of a delay, so I apologize.
That's okay. What do we still need to know and how do we find out is the key that says what we still need to know is what, should you need to know it from an assessment, what you need to know frames the scope of that assessment. An assistive technology evaluation or assistive technology assessment has no constant definition. Oops. Hey, Kirk.
Hi.
Is it just us?
I hope not. I think you can go on.
Okay. So, all right. So what we're talking about here is if we can solve a problem by asking the person, like I could say to Kirk, something because we're sitting here together. And if he can answer the question that's a question, then we don't have to do an evaluation to answer that question. But if there are certain things we want to know, what questions need to be answered is really, really important. So that part of when we're having our conversation, what do we agree upon? What do we not have the same observation about? And how will we find out if that's so or not? And sometimes that's an evaluation and sometimes it's an observation. Could be many things. But if it is an evaluation, that's what you want to make sure that's what whatever your questions are actually get answered in that evaluation. So the last little part is basically about how are the questions different? Everybody talks about who's our student, what are our environments like, what are our tests like, and what tool sets do we need to put in place. But the family and the caregiver may have, what do we want to say about our student? What do we want to talk about the environments? What are the tests that we believe our student is finding difficult or impossible? And what do you think would help not only our student, but would help us and the others working with him move forward? And then there's the student themselves, whose voice is huge. What do I want people to know about me? What do I want them to know about my strengths and my challenges? What do I want them to know about in the environments, the things that I consider barriers to my learning and the things that facilitate my learning? And then what are the tests that I have a lot of difficulty with? What are the tests I really don't? I'm fine with. Can I use some of those to leverage the ones that I'm having difficulty with? And then what tools do I need? Or what, and it doesn't even mean, they don't have to know the name of anything. I need something that will help me do whatever. And probably in closing, I think the notion that we're really thinking about what helps our student move forward, always thinking about it. And to remember, for me, when I go from student environment tasks to tools, I say, okay, so if there were something out there that would help Kirk do what he needs to do in these environments we've just described and doing these tasks we've just been talking about, what would that be like? And that's such a different question than what features does a tool have to have? Because then people say, I don't know what that is. But if you say, what would it be like? Everyone can go into their imagination and then your AT person can help you know if something what is that? What is that thing out there? We don't know what it's called, but here's what it has to do. And then we have something we can seek those devices for. So that's a bit about the SETT framework and what I think about it. So.
And I do want to add here too that if you go on joyzabala.com, you'll also see some forms that you can download. So these might be supplemental forms that maybe are not part of the the TAN process, but these are really some nice decision-making tools that you could use in order to help you in your process or your framework thinking about some of these things. Also, some ways to actually, regulate what's happening within that framework as well. Maybe assigning some roles and responsibilities to certain people on the team. If that's not part of your, AT assessment part, maybe it should be something that should be agreed upon in the IEP meeting when you're starting to look at some certain tools that, the AT person will do some research on and get back to us about, the device or something of that nature. So that you can have some of those tools, guidelines, frameworks, pieces. So definitely look at joyzabala.com.
And you'll see a picture on joyzabala.com that doesn't look a bit like me. It was actually taken by Kurt Minkey standing on a table, and it was about 15 years ago, probably. So
probably.
The same person.
Don't date us now. Don't date us, Joy.
So Melinda, thank you so much for having us.
Yes. No, thank you. And as we had said that we weren't having any tech issues, and I suddenly start getting kicked off all over the place, I'd have just a couple of questions, if that's okay.
Of course.
That I wanted to just ask. So because we're looking at environments when doing a SETT, this theoretically could work in any external. And so how do parents encourage the SETT process to be outside of that classroom with their teams?
I think it's a matter of where do these functional concerns that we have occur, which is really almost the same sort of process that you go through with positive behavior supports. Where are the places that the barriers exist that we can now do something about? And think about this. Think about the student who uses a communication aid. Okay, in the classroom, there may be some quiet times. When they go to the cafeteria, that voice output communication aid could potentially be relatively useless because of the noise level in a cafeteria. So, okay, what's the backup plan for when they can't use the electronic voice output device? Or if you're going to the playground, you may or may not take whatever technology you're using in one place, so that what you're really looking at with your tools is a system. Not one thing that does everything everywhere, but what's our system? When I some years ago had an opportunity to work with a couple of people who were going to use a new communication tool, and we were beta testing it. And I said to the gentleman I was working with, said to me, "So what will this new thing do that my old one wouldn't do?" And I said, "Oh, with this one, you can do everything." Now, this was a high-tech electronic device, right? And he said, "I can't wait to get into the pool." And it was like, no, it won't do everything everywhere, because of course he couldn't take it to the pool, but he wanted to be able to communicate in the pool. So we talked about some other ways that could happen. So I think that notion of the multiple environments, I think the key to it, Melinda, is what is the area of concern? And does that area of concern happen just here, or does it happen here, here, and here?
Good answer.
Thank you.
Definitely look at the environments, and speaking from a universal design for learning perspective, you can arrange or engineer the environment so they're a little bit more open and flexible in order to have that. So let's say, for example, you're in an environment in the cafeteria situation that you just said, maybe there's just a small annex that the person who's using a communication device could go to with their friends, so they can still be part of the whole cafeteria, but could they be in a more quiet corner or an annex or somewhere that they could be able to speak with their friends in about? So
right. just so we are always thinking about how much separation we're doing there, which I know is important to you too. The making those environments, and that would be a way to manipulate an environment. But what kind of things might they talk about? Do they need, what tool works the best in what situation? It's just like it. Kirk, I notice right now you're nodding. We do a lot of nodding. Okay, if somebody can nod, we know that that's an affirmation, a yes, or something like that. You don't have to put a yes on my communication board. Saying yes. And if you say it on your communication board, then it's like, but that I said yes. So here's the trick. This is the trick. If you want somebody to be able to say yes on their communication board, call them on the phone. They can just nod, and it's not going to work at all. So what you're learning there is which part of your system works for what. And that's an important thing we all have to learn.
Very nice. Melinda, I'm sorry that you're having such technical difficulty.
Yeah. You need to CP Snow. I think I jinxed you, Melinda, with my CP Snow by saying we haven't had any of those stabs in the back.
We can hear you, I think. Guess not.
Yeah, I think Melinda looked mildly in the witness protection program at that point.
Oh, poor Melinda. Anyone who's on here, if you wanted to put any comments in the chat window, we can review those or anything like that. So I'm trying to step in here for our namesake Melinda here, but I want to say thanks to Joy for coming in tonight and talking about
Thank you, Kirk, for coming in tonight too.
Let's have a little discussion, and maybe I know that Melinda, you and I talked about doing something with AIM later on, perhaps in December or something like that. So stay tuned for possibly some more for podcasts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That we can do together.
Right. And also, anybody who wants to can write to me at joy@joyzavala.com. If there's anything that you're confused about, or if I said one thing 1 minute and another one the next minute, which sometimes happens to me, don't hesitate. And if I don't answer you, write again. Figure it got buried.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, all the links will be in the actual chat screen for everybody. And I really do appreciate you. I'm going to end the broadcast because we've got a few minutes over, but I do appreciate it. And there was so much information that was being able to be imparted. Everybody, please thank Joy Zabala and Kirk Benke, and hopefully we will get both of them back again soon. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
The broadcast.